I saw a comment on Twitter a few days ago, February 4th. I bookmarked it, but never really had the time to come around it. I thought it was going to be interesting to talk about, so let's go ahead and see it. This user here, Link, says, in quote, keep funding our Game Pass is such an insufferable take. Man, the word insufferable used in this context. I wonder what insufferable means. It means too extreme to bear. Intolerable. Wow. I guess the people that are making that claim, you are making ears burn with your take of, what I think is kind of the reality, ain't it? And we're going to talk about that in that perspective. They said Game Pass needs to be self-sufficient to be successful. It already is. I mean, this is the one thing that a lot of people have not necessarily taken into account is this service has been here since 2017. If my calculations are right, that's going on 8 years by June of 2025. And even before they acquired Activision Blizzard King, even before they moved into this new generation of consoles, the service had already basically stayed for at least 3 years. Then you have the fact that the service has expanded to PC and is getting adoption on the PC side, judging from Microsoft's recent financials. Because I've always said it, like, the Game Pass proposition is too logical for a lot of PC users to ignore. And I say that simply because a lot of PC users have now been basically the, subject of poor ports, right? And so they're looking and saying, before I give $70, I'd rather find myself in a position where my cost basis is little. Sure, I have Steam refund, don't get me wrong, but I'm needing to be certain that the game is going to come out pristine these days. So a service like Game Pass already tells them, well, at least this is where I can test out these games. If I like it, I just go buy on my Steam library, or they can entertain the thought of buying it right there on Xbox's library. Not many Steam users will do that, but I do. I'm platform agnostic at the end of the day. Give me value, I'll give you money. That's me. Don't care who you are. AMD, Nvidia, Intel. Well, Intel, yikes. I haven't seen that in a long time. Right? So this conversation is already weird. They said PlayStation games sales help Microsoft, not Game Pass directly. Hold on. Do y'all remember that the first problem that we heard about Game Pass was the cannibalization of sales? Right? Do y'all remember that concern? Game Pass cannibalizes sales. Right? So if Game Pass cannibalizes sales, what should you do to mitigate the cannibalization of sales? I wonder. Let me leave you all for a few seconds to think about that. Here's the question of the day. If your service cannibalizes sales or has a potential to cannibalize sales, what should you do to mitigate the cannibalization of sales? I'll give you 5 seconds to think about it. Aha, 5 seconds over. You sell more console. You sell more games, sorry. That's what you do so that the games that have been cannibalized are recovered. That's why Xbox looked and said, sure. But y'all are criticizing Xbox already, saying that they're capitulating and they're going away from business. They're going to stop selling consoles. Yes, the games developed do end up on Game Pass, but Xbox fans should hype its value, not fake subsidies. It's not a subsidy. It's a profit growth, strategy. That's what it is. They basically win on all ends. They dip here and dip there and dip everywhere. And by the time you know, these guys are swimming in dough. I did a little video the other day where I came up with this, massive, insane. Guys, I don't know what hit me. I just got up and I said, I'm going to go ahead and pocket watch Xbox for like a few minutes. And I ran some numbers with Call of Duty, and I put all these other games. You can use the same calculation to come up with what Xbox is going to take to the bank. And when it was all said and done, Xbox is literally got its hands in the jar of PlayStation, taking 70% from them when they put their games on there, getting 100% on their own platform, getting 70% from Steam, and then they have their Battle.net launcher, and then they have a subscription service where they're basically getting all this money from. This is the exact reason that PlayStation said this, that Xbox has the ability, Microsoft, to supply multi-game via subscription, console games, and PC. They're netting all this dough. So the cannibalization of sales is not affecting Game Pass. In fact, the cannibalization of sales puts everything at ease and still gives value. And this is why many people are hypothesizing that by the next console generation, you're going to see people actually consider moving to the Xbox ecosystem, or they get a PC and they dial in with services like Game Pass and what Xbox is doing. Very slow approach, but one that actually has its bases covered, because it's not going to go there and go do a loss. Because many people have sat there to believe that, Game Pass was running at a loss when it wasn't. And then when they found out, they want to pivot now. That, don't say that, these games are, you're subsidizing our games. Don't say that, PlayStation. No. This is not an insufferable take. This is just sensible at the end of the day. And to try to downplay this is just one of those things that you'll see again done in this entire conversation. I replied, I said, Game Pass has been a thing since 2017. Even before the Bethesda acquisition, its value has never been in question, even on the PC side. These takes are just quite tiresome some days because, man, you find yourself in a position where you're more than you're doing more of this cleanup more than you even need to, because everybody knows exactly what the truth is. You probably just don't like the Xbox player is saying that, but it's a response because you know how it is. Everybody is joshing, one another. The PlayStation fan is saying, "Oh, we got your games," and so the Xbox fan is looking and saying, "Well, I just come up with something silly." Well, you're subsidizing our Game Pass. You're paying for our Game Pass games, of which they are paying for the cannibalization of sales. It's just that true. Let me give you a hypothetical. We'll go back to that document again, right? Because I feel like I feel like this is it's janky. Don't get me wrong, right? Let's say, for instance, Indiana Jones, right? 1 million units of Indiana Jones were cannibalized on Game Pass. 1 million units. That's if the game, having launched in December, which was a very, busy period for a lot of people, only 1 million more people would have bought it. But instead, they subscribed to Game Pass and they played it, right? When they launched the game on PlayStation, what's going to happen is that cannibalization is going to be reduced significantly. At this point, we can say if PlayStation takes 30%, 700,000 units is pretty much going to be Xbox's own coffers. So they have now mitigated. I better remove this. This thing has an equation already in there. They have now mitigated that potential sales units by 700,000. Instead of the 1 million that they would have sold, let's just give PlayStation 30% and say 300,000 copies is yours. That's the cost of doing business. They've already basically mitigated that by 700,000. That is a wise business strategy. That is a wise business strategy because actually the so-called mitigation was already done. And this is where I got you, right? The so-called mitigation was already done by subscription fees and subscription costs. Because if they actually brought in, think with me here. Let's think. You want to help me with that? If they already brought in, say, because it was Game Pass Ultimate, right? And I'm using the number $12. Some people pay $19.99 for Game Pass. Some people buy the keys and are able to get 3 months for less than $10 a month. So that's why I'm using $12 as kind of a middle ground. It's not really middle, but we're going to use it as a middle ground. So let's say 1 million people subscribe to Game Pass at $12. They have not only netted $700,000 worth of sales, which if we multiplied that by 60, right? 700,000, that's 7 million. Times $60, of which it's more than that, that's 42 million. They've also netted another 12 million in terms of Game Pass subscribers, putting them at $54 million for Indiana Jones. Not a bad deal. If the 1 million users, right, had actually bought the game, it would have been about 60 something million, right? But for 54 million and gaining Game Pass subscribers, To me, that's a fair cost of doing business. And those Game Pass subscribers, what are they likely to do? They're likely to do the one thing that a lot of people don't really know that is actually done, on Xbox's ecosystem, which is actually a real thing. What if half of them bought the game because they like the game? Did you ever think about that? Did you think about that? What if half of them went ahead and bought the game? Tell me. So on the 54 million that they've already made versus the 60 million, if 500,000 more of them were to go ahead and buy that game, that's 50 million. That's 5 million, right? And bought it for $60. That's 30 million on top of this 54 million, which you said was less. They have made $84 million. They have accountants that, are actually much more brilliant than Twitter. This is where a lot of people kind of miss the whole plot. They don't realize that this is a zero-sum game that you can't deny that this company is here to farm dough. And many people don't look at the long-term ramifications of the things that they're saying. They're not paying attention that, they would have sold 1 million units. Chris Dring and his drivel of 80% of sales is the number being thrown around. And they called him an analyst, and he could not analyze these possibilities as well. When the regular Joe sitting in some rando place that's a school teacher can just pick up a simple calculator and say, okay, this is a possibility. I'm not saying this is a definitive. But if there's cannibalization and the cannibalization can be compensated to a higher revenue margin, then I think a lot of these so-called analysts are playing games, because I can almost guarantee you they know this particular possibility and they're just choosing not to tell you about it because it's not sensational. It's not. It's rough around the edges. It's not pretty. It's not salacious. Can't sell you clicks. And so everybody can clip it and basically post it all over Twitter, but nobody would ever sit down for 5 minutes and pick up a calculator and say, what are the possibilities? What are the probabilities here? This is the world that we're living. Well, you know what? I'm going to capitalize on this bad boy. I'm going to make sure that we talk about this as much as we can. Talk to me in the comment section. Let me hear your thoughts. Peace out.